Hello there and welcome to Wildcard Decks, and today I have a very different deck list for you. So Bossk Blue, I'm sure you saw the thumbnail and thought, I know all about Bossk Blue, I don't need to know about Bossk Blue, I know things that I don't want to know about Bossk Blue. Well, this deck is to prove, well actually it's mainly for the vibes, but it also is to help prove that you can play different leader combination and colours different ways. So this is an aggro Bossk Blue deck, so it is the complete antithesis of the Bossk Blue decks that are going around at tournaments, etc. And it also goes probably a little bit too all-in on its central gimmick, but we'll get into that in a second. So Bossk himself, we all know what he does. His action is to deal 1 damage to a unit with a bounty. So you may have seen, if you were eagle-eyed in the deck image, that we don't actually have any bounties whatsoever, so you know this deck is already a bit crazy as it is. It's even crazier because we're not putting bounties on enemy units. What we are looking to do is play bounties, play units that have bounties tied into them, so you can then actually make use of this +1 attack ability, which has probably never been used before. So that's the central gimmick of this deck. We run Security Complex because we have we're going to have a lot of damage units for one thing. We have units with grit as well, so it just helps us get a bit more longevity out of our units and allow them to get 1 or 2 extra attacks in. Bossk coming out on 5 is quite useful because this deck burns brightly and fizzles out, so being able to get your leader out relatively early, and 4 attacks pretty decent as well. You're not going to be making use of the collecting bounties twice unless your opponent is playing units that have bounties innately attached to them. I think Clone Deserter is probably the only one that is really used in any sort of meaningful context, but it is there just in case. So onto the numbers. Most of this deck is units as per usual with me. 26 on the ground, 9 in space, so heavily focused on the ground. Resource cost, everything's dirt cheap as you can see. A handful of 3 and 4 costs, but the majority is 1 and 2, so it is swarmy and just trying to get things done as quickly as possible. In terms of rarity, we've got pretty much 2/3 as common, so it is entirely plausible to be able to put this deck together to just try something a little bit, I say a little bit, very different, and as I say, for the vibes. And the only special so-called rarity card in here is Admiral Motti, who was in set 1 starter deck, or he was available in the weekly packs at that time as well. So onto the non-bounty units, on the ground anyway. We've got Benthic, who's just a decent choice to have to boost up your other aggression units, because they will get Raid 2, so a 1-cost Death Star Stormtrooper can hit for 5. What I will say is that in the current environment, 1 health units probably not in a very great spot anymore, but this deck was constructed when it was just set 2, so I mean you still had Cad Bane going around in set 2 anyway, but yeah, we're going back in time a little bit. I think genuinely with a bit of refining and a bit more thought behind it, I guess, rather than going all in on the central gimmick, this deck might actually have some pretty good results. I've run a Django deck extremely close, but it just couldn't get that final 2 damage over the line. Very frustrating. And to be honest, I think that deck is a very good deck, but I think in that game, the Cad Bane capturing my whole ground arena is really what put the brakes on it. And then the second game was unfortunately not as close for me. Admiral Motti, so 1/1, complete weakling, but when defeated, ready any villainy unit. So this includes leaders, so Bossk would be your main target here, or Sinara Sand, spoiler alert, if she's powered up. You could also do Daring Raid on Admiral Motti to kill him, so that you can then ready up something that's actually interesting. We've got Pike Sentinel, so 2-cost Sentinel with 3 health, which is pretty decent at that stage. with Security Complex, Pike Sentinel is a pretty good option to... Someone just beeped outside, I don't know if that came through. Yeah, Pike Sentinel can be a good option to use Security Complex on to shield it so that you can keep your attackers hiding behind it and doing damage. Now, onto the main gimmick of this deck. All of these have bounties tied to them. So, we've gone all in on the cheapest ones of the 2-1 costs of Guardian and Hylabon. Now, the Guardian has Saboteur, which can be quite significant. Just punch through any Sentinels. Crucially, it will kill Village Protectors in one hit, so killing a 3-cost units with a 1 cost is always very nice. With Bossk's boost ability, it can hit for 3. With Hylabon, 1 Bossk boost will mean it hits for 3 as well, and then 2 after that. With Val, she can hit for 3. With Wanted Insurgents, they can hit for 5 with a Bossk boost. And Sonara-san, after a Bossk boost, she will hit for 4. Now, she won't hit for 5 because, unfortunately, the bounty is when she is exhausted. So, you're not going to be able to have her ready and use Bossk's boost on her to give her the +1 as well, because she won't have a bounty tied to her at that point. So, it's a little bit unfortunate. But anyway, I'm going a little bit ahead of myself. On to Val, and I think of all the cards in this deck, she's the one I would probably ditch because she's too much of a liability. So 2-4 stats is not even actually that great considering she's got a bounty on her. But what you have to do with Val is make sure that you are the active player at the point she's going to die, because she's got 2 on-death triggers basically. So the bounty is deal 3 damage to a unit, and when defeated is give 2 experience tokens to a friendly unit. So what you would want to do is throw her into an enemy unit, she dies, you can then say, yep, we'll give 2 experience tokens to whatever it is, they then deal 3 damage to whatever unit, and that unit will still survive. That's kind of the idea. In practice, yeah, I think she's too much of a liability, especially when combined with the next one. So Wanted Insurgents can hit for 5, as I say, which for a 3 cost is extremely good, and if you've got Benfic out as well, then this can stack up quite quickly. But its bounty is to deal 2 damage to a unit, so if you've already got Val potentially killing your stuff, this might also kill your stuff when it dies. So yeah, I think Val is just too much to include it. But yeah, as I say, I went all in on the gimmick. So, but yeah, Wanted Insurgents, very good to just getting that damage. Sonara-san, we've got Daring Raid and Open Fire in this deck, so it is an option that you use either of those on Sonara to power her up quickly and then pop a shield on her. So if you use Open Fire on her, she's going to be hitting for 7. Yeah, she'll only have 2 health left, but, you know, 7 damage is pretty darn good. So, yeah, she's the powerhouse. Onto the Space Arena. TIE Fighters, Mercenary Gunship. One thing to remember with a Mercenary Gunship, when you're getting to 4 resources, your opponent may decide to take control of it. So you may just want to run it into whatever space unit they've got to just take it out of commission and take their unit out of commission as well. And then we've got Unlicensed Headhunter. So Concord Dawn Interceptors are regrettably a thing. They are a very good roadblock to put in place at 3 resources. This has Saboteur, so it don't matter. One thing to keep in mind is that when it's exhausted, it gains the bounty of heal 5 damage from your base. So sequencing, again, is something to keep in mind with this. On to our events, and spoiler alert, there is no wildcard section in this video, because frankly, this whole deck is a wildcard, so there wasn't really something to highlight in particular. Perhaps Val would have been the one to highlight, but yeah, this whole deck is a bit of a wild card in itself. Anyway, Daring Raid, just for its versatility, kill a unit, power up your own, hit their base. Ticks all the boxes. Desperate Attack, bit like Daring Raid, but it's more action efficient because you can attack with a damaged unit, and because of Bossk's ability and the whole gimmick of this deck, it's likely you are going to have a damaged unit at any one time, so you're going to get an extra 2 damage to, well, ideally, base for 1 cost, and quite easy to achieve. Got Keep Fighting in here so that you can get another attack in out of nowhere. Now, this is something to bear in mind with sequencing as well. If my mouse would appear. For example, if your Hylabon Enforcer has 2 damage on it, then it's got 3 power. You'll then use Keep Fighting on it, so that it can attack. No, sorry. Let's get it right. It's ready. It's got 2 damage on it already. It hits into base. You then use Keep Fighting on it. It's got 3 power. You then use Bossk's Ping, give it +1. It then hits for 4. So you can do 7 damage in one phase with the Hylabon Enforcer, if you sequence things right, and assuming your opponent does nothing about it. And then the final event is Open Fire, deal 4 damage to a unit. As I say, most spots you'll use it to kill a Sentinel or something like that, but you can also use it to power up Sonara-san, as I've mentioned already. The only upgrade that I've decided on this deck is Aunt of Teeth, so gives you an extra 4 power if you've got 2 units that are ready, and assuming your opponent isn't able to do anything about it. And it can also be smuggled in, so if you draw 2 of them early game, then it's just an easy resource decision to make, because you do not want... Well, if you're able to pull it off and put 2 of these on Bossk when he deploys, then you're going to be having a party, but unlikely. So, yeah, but it just helps you get that damage out quickly, because you need the game to end pretty much as soon as possible. So, yeah, let me know what you think. As I say, this deck is very much built on vibes. I think with some refinement, it could actually be a genuine, it'll do some work as an aggro deck. I think the main thing that would improve it, as I mentioned earlier, is replacing Val with something somewhat more viable and less risky. But yeah, let me know what you think. And who knows, maybe in the future, at the PQs, the Bossk self-bounty blue aggro deck will be the talk of the town. I suspect not, but we can only hope. Anyway, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.